Hello everyone, and thank you for joining our session for Evolve 365 Microsoft Tips and Tricks today. We wanted to start this weekly series to give simple and easy tips that anyone can go back to their desk and quickly implement. We know that your time is valuable and always thank you for joining us, so we're striving to keep sessions to no more than 30 minutes, sometimes even less. We're pushing out these topics monthly, so you just have to sign up once for the monthly series instead of 4 or 5 times. If you ever miss a session, you can always find our recordings on the Planet Technologies YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/planettechnologies. So a little about myself. I'm your host for today, Tanya Kaiser, and I'm going to be leading most sessions. From time to time, we may have other Planet team members jump in. I have more than 15 years experience with project management across multiple industries, including technology, legal, nonprofit, and construction. I'm a longtime Microsoft geek and SharePoint nerd. One of the things that I really enjoy is showing people how they can learn new skills with the products that they've been using for years. If you ever have any questions after our sessions, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. A little about Planet. Planet has been providing expert support in the Microsoft world for over 18 years. We offer full services for the entire Microsoft Cloud and Productivity Suite, including advisory, deployment and training services, mobile application development and solutions, and strategic business consulting, including technology, compliance, and security guidance. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off. We're going to go back to SharePoint today, and we're going to look at some of the different view options that are available in SharePoint and how you can create and modify your own views and what's coming up next for all of our SharePoint updates that we're starting to see. So starting with the basics, what is a view in SharePoint? A view is simply a way to view the data that you have in any application, whether that's a list, a library, or one of the specific apps like a calendar or task list. Views are simply helping you organize your data so it's easier to view what is important to you. Now there are quite a few built-in views that we're going to be taking a look at. You can also create your own. And of course certain apps like the task list or calendar or project list already have built-in views specific to that app. So just remember all views they're applying different settings and filters to your data in a list or library. It's not changing the data that's in there, it's simply the way that you look at it. So some of our top built-in views. Now anytime you create a list or library in SharePoint, you're going to get by default that standard view. And it's going to give you some basic information that SharePoint tracks no matter what kind of app you have. That's usually the title or name field, the date created, the date modified, and who those author and editors are. So the author will be the person who created that item, and the editor will be the person who modified that. So regardless of what kind of app you're using in SharePoint, I guarantee you that that information is the basic components of what SharePoint is tracking. And even if you can't see that in your view, I guarantee you it exists on that list. So another really popular one is the data sheet view. This is one of my favorite ones. It actually allows you to bulk edit items in a list or library, much like a spreadsheet. So you don't have to go through each individual item in order to add them. You can go to that data sheet view. It's built into most lists and libraries and do that bulk editing and save a lot of time. Now, a lot of these views aren't really changing the way your data looks on the screen. It's just what organization, what filter is on. Some of them actually do have visual components of them, and those are the boxed one, which sounds exactly what it was. It's going to frame your data in a nice little box. We have a newsletter, which puts things in a more linear format, but it has a line separating each piece of data. We have a shaded one, which sounds exactly what it does. It shades every other line, and if you have a long list or a list of documents in a library, this sometimes helps to separate that out, make it a little bit easier to read. We have a preview pane, which actually will show you the details of the item that you're hovering over with your cursor. So I'm going to switch over to one of my demo sites, and we're going to just take a quick look at those built-in views that we have. So I'm in my demo site. Of course, we've got a pop-up because it's letting us know that our demo has a new library experience, and I'm just in a document library right now. So this is just a plain document library. You can see I have the name of the documents. I have when they were modified and who they were modified by. And on this particular library, I've also got a column for checked out, and then I've got a rating. So again, this is a pretty standard view. It's been modified a little bit because it has a checked out column. And in this library, they're using a rating view. Now this is the brand new library experience. And the brand new library experience gives you some options directly within the page to change up your view. So if you're in the modern library experience, right away by clicking our drop down on our charm bar, you see we have a list view and we have a tiles view. And this is again part of the new modern experience that they're bringing to SharePoint. So switching to that tile view, you can see it's much more visual. Now we can't see all of the details. We can see the name of the person who edits it, and if we hover over them, we'll get some additional information, but it's pretty slimlined with the content that you're there. You're seeing the visual aspect of it, but you actually have to select the item and then get more details. So the great thing about the modern view is that you can quickly go back to that list view. So if I unselect that one item, I can switch back to my list view. So that's one thing that I really do like about the modern library experience, the ability to go from visual to list very, very easily. You'll also notice here that we've got a Save View option and a Manage Views option. So people can come in and automatically start moving columns around. So if I wanted to come in here and filter, let's actually do this by the rating. Maybe I want to set up a view based on rating. So from directly within the modern library experience, I'm going to tell it to, filter by the rating, group by rating, and it's going to change my view. Now I can come in here and I can say I want this to sort larger to smaller, so I see the top rated documents on the top. You can see it's giving me a count. And then I can come in here and save this view directly on the page. I didn't have to go to the settings menu like we would normally do. So I'm just going to save this view. But now I'm going to switch over to the standard classic library. And if you're wondering how you do that, it's always in the lower left-hand corner, return to classic SharePoint. So I'm going to go back to my classic SharePoint. Now I just created this brand new view, and it's going to default to that even when I switch back to classic. But one way that you can switch from views is on the ribbon. So you can see we have our files ribbon, we have our library ribbon. You can see I can create a view, but I can have this drop down right here. Now my default is the all documents, and then here's that view that I just created on the modern library page. So if you're using the modern library experience and wondering, what are the benefits of it, it's a big change. It's going to be different for your users. If your users create a lot of views, it's going to be much easier for them to do it with just a few clicks. So I'm going to go back to our default documents view. And it's going to just bring me back to that list. Now if I wanted to create a brand new view or maybe even switch to one of the built-in ones, that's going to be done from the library settings. So we're going to go into our settings menu. And views are always at the bottom. So any built-in views that you already have are going to be at the bottom. And it's always a little misleading. It looks like this all documents is not a link, but that is an actual link, and it's taking you to that specific view. So we know that we're in our all documents view. Now if I want to come in here and modify this just a little bit, I just click, and then it's going to bring me up a different page, and you can see that I have the option of what information I want to display. So we can see I was displaying rating, I was displaying checked out to, modified, modified by. If I want to come in and add the created date, I can come in here and just check those. I can reorder those columns if I wanted to, and it's going to give me that basic information. So these are all the items that SharePoint is tracking. And like I said, just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't live there. SharePoint is very much keeping track of it, but your views let you determine how much of that data that you're seeing for your items. So if we scroll down this page, we can see we can sort items. It's normally sorted by alphabetical as the default. You can filter items, so we can specify based on the columns that we're using. Maybe we filter by the ratings like in that other view that I created. And then when we click and expand these, we've got a tabular view. We can group items. If we had a lookup column, maybe these are not just title names, maybe they're department names for the documents. We have totals, and then what we want to take a closer look at is style. So style is where we're going to see some of those other ones that I mentioned, like the preview pane, shaded, newsletter, no lines, newsletter with lines, and then a basic table. So I'm going to show you first the preview pane. And this is going to be very similar to the tile look in that modern library experience. So I'm just going to click OK. You always have to remember if you're changing a view to scroll down and click OK. And you can see that in this preview pane, it looks a little bit different. You've got a lot of preview text here that's not that great with an Excel document. But if we've got a Word document, we can just hover over these items and you can see that it's changing that view. So again, much better experience with the modern library. You have a true preview. We're going to go back to our library ribbon. And we can go over to library settings, or we can always come in and say modify the view. So I'm going to click modify the view. That's going to take me directly into that menu where I can come in and change my view. So I'm going to scroll all the way back down. We're going to go back to that style group. And now we're going to take a look at shading. I'm just going to click through these pretty quickly just so you can see what they do. This is sometimes hard for people to do on existing SharePoint sites because they don't want to mess up their data. But remember, all the view is doing is just changing the way your data looks. It's actually not modifying any of your data at all. So you can see exactly what shaded does. So if you had, happens to be a document library. If we happen to have a really, really long list, we would still be able to do this with a list that had things more similar to an Excel column. But you can imagine here we've only got 3 or 4 columns displaying. If we were displaying a lot of numbers, this shaded view would really help us be able to drill down and read that much easier. So this is simply what shaded does. It gives you that list format, but it's just adding some visual separation to the page. So we're going to go back to our library column and click Modify View again. And again, we're going to scroll all the way down to columns. Now this columns is normally expanded. When you're modifying a view, you can just collapse these if you want. But for the most part, that's going to always be expanded there. We're going to look at newsletter, no lines. Click OK, and it'll take us into our view. You can see it doesn't look like it really changed it a whole lot for our newsletter view because this is, let me make sure that it did change that one. We're going to go back to Modify View. And you can see it automatically expanded columns. So even if you keep collapsing that one, it's always going to be open for you when you go back into this Modify View page. So newsletter really didn't change for us. We're going to go back to newsletter again. And it may be because this is a document library instead of a list, but you still have that in here. And here's what I was looking for newsletter. So it may just be that newsletter no lines didn't work. This is what the newsletter view does. So if we were to start adding more content to this view, maybe we wanted to show the by date, the information on the page is going to get bigger. But you do have that visual separation with that very light line. So if shaded is maybe too drastic, but you still want to make it a little bit easier to read, some people go with newsletter because, again, it just adds that little bit of line, and depending on how much data you're showing on the screen, that may be helpful. So if we come back into modifier view, we're going to leave it in newsletter, but we're going to check off some of these other sources that we have in here. So let's add created and created by. Maybe we want to add the file size, and maybe we want to add the version. We can show number of likes. We already have number of ratings. But we're just going to add in a few other ones. We can even add in check and comment, and we'll make that the last item since we have version number. So we'll just put this towards the end. And then we'll go ahead and scroll down and click OK. And let's see how that changes now that we've added in some more information to this calendar view. So you can see as we add information, now this is just adding it to the bottom of it. But you can see if we started getting more and more content in there, that newsletter helps separate it out a little bit. So we're going to go back to our library ribbon, click Modify View. And this time I'm going to uncheck, well, we'll come back and check that later. We're going to go back to Style, and we're going to look at the boxed view. And on this one, we actually don't have box view, but we have basic tables. So we'll take a look at that one. You can see it's giving us a basic table, but all this information that we've entered is more linear. So again, your data is not changing. It's just strictly how it looks to you. So depending on what kind of information you have in a list, it's going to make a big, big difference to you. Now I want to show you really, really briefly how this would look on a mobile app. So I'm just going to switch over to my screen really quickly. And I'm going to go over to my SharePoint app, and I'm actually in the documents. Now you can see in the mobile, it defaulted to that preview tile view that we had in the modern library experiences, but I can still come in and click and go back to a list view if I want. Now on a mobile device, this is going to be a little bit harder to read depending on how much info we're displaying. So you can see why this modern library experience, and then coming later as we talk about at the end of this, the modern list experience is going with Microsoft's mobile first, cloud first platform that they're pushing for, or cloud first, mobile first. They can is the way that they list it. So you can see I've got that menu to go from list to tiles, save view, manage view, and this works great for a mobile device. I can see a preview of the document. I really can't tell who edited unless I know that person's first name. So if I wanted to actually open a document, I'd have to just know the document that I'm looking for, but it's pretty easy on a touch device to switch back and forth between those two main views that they pushed out with modern libraries, the list view or the tile view. Now if I come in here and I'm changing all my different views from a mobile device, there's not a whole lot that I can do. I can come in and manage views since I am an admin, but again, if you start thinking about your SharePoint lists and libraries and how they're going to be viewed on mobile, you may just want to take a look at your list view for the default one and see what information is the most important. Maybe in this case it would be grouping it by rating. So I can just come in here to the mobile app and say I want to group it larger to smaller, and then I've got the top rated documents right there. And if I wanted to come in and maybe I want to filter on a certain date, I can also come in and do that with the mobile app as well. Since this is a demo, it looks like they all have the same date. I could also come in and say I want to filter by documents that were just modified by Garth, one of my coworkers. So even from a mobile device, I can drill down pretty easily with the new interface. I'm just going to switch back to my tile view. You can see then it gets a lot easier. Now if I'm in my tile view, again, I have the files there. I can always go back to documents. I can always come in and still filter by that. But it looks a lot better in the mobile app than it has in the past. So we're going to go back to my presentation and we're going to continue on. So we saw some of those own views, right? The newsletter, the shaded, they change it visually, they break it up, they make it easier to read. But a lot of people want to come in and create their own. There's a lot of different reasons why you may want to do that. You saw me filter on the mobile app by a person's name. That's built-in stuff. But if you have custom columns, you may want to filter by those custom columns. And you may want to set up very specific filters for those custom columns. You may want to have a view just for admins. One of my very, very favorite views to set up is a flat view with no folders at all. So we've had tips and tricks sessions on, should you use folders, should you not use folders, and I've talked about this before. Some people are always going to use folders in SharePoint, and that's not at all a bad thing. They are there for when you need them. But if you're doing some admin work on SharePoint, and it's really hard to know what are the true modified dates of content when they're inside a folder because you only see the folder date, you don't see the date for the stuff inside the folder. You can set up an admin view or just a flat view and remove those folders. That's one that I'll show in just a minute. You can also build several different views on the same list or library, and then you can use those views to create a dashboard. So we've got a session out on our YouTube channel on building dashboards in SharePoint that you can go and view. It's an hour long, given by Jennifer Mason. But if we take something like our documents library that we're looking at that has 5 stars, we could create 4 different views, 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, and 1 and 2-star, and then create a brand new SharePoint page and just put up those web parts so users can come in and, oh, I want to see all the 5-star documents. They don't even have to filter. You've built a dashboard for them. And there's different ways that you can build dashboards. You can have, a project list, and you can show a dashboard showing who things are assigned to you or what level of completion they are. Complete, 50%, not started, pending, late. You can imagine anything that you can filter on a view can then be pushed to a dashboard. So we are looking at modern and classic. So all views are created from the list and library settings view in classic mode. So you're going to have to go to that ribbon. Now that's changing a little bit with the modern library. So let's go ahead and go back to our SharePoint site. And I'm actually going to go pull up a different list. These are all documents. And it's great. You've seen some of the ways that I can filter on documents. In this case, we're using ratings. But if we go back to our SharePoint sites, I'm going to pull one that maybe has a little bit more of a list view versus a documents view. So I know there's some information in research and development, and I'm going to open up another site just so we can keep looking through them. And what we're looking for is really a list. Now this works for document libraries because a document library is still a list, it just happens to have files attached to it. So if we don't find a list, we'll go back pretty shortly. I'm of course getting all my reminders for my demo tenant. And that international sales one also has documents. So I'll take a quick peek at that one. If nothing else, we'll go back to our documents view. Oh, looks like one of my pages was accidentally deleted from my demo tenant. So we'll just go back to our documents. And I'm actually going to go back to remove some of these filters in here. That will continue to pop up every time I open the site. So That's just one of the things that we get to work with when we have a demo tenant. Let me close out some of these other ones as we get back to our documents that we were working on. So we're going to go back into this document ones. Yes, I will renew. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to create a brand new view, and we have some people here that we can look at. So we've got a document type. We can see sales marketing. So this is a great example of something that you may want to filter on and group just by a particular column. So we know this is a custom column because they have department names in here essentially. Looks like they have a few different departments, so that'll work for our use case of creating a brand new view. Now again, I'm in the classic mode in SharePoint, so you would always start with the library settings or on the ribbon, create a view, modify a view. In my case, I'm going to come in and I'm going to create a brand new view. And when you see this choice, you have standard view, calendar view, data sheet view, a Gantt view, and then custom view in SharePoint Designer. All I'm going to do is just create a standard view, and you can even start from the existing view for all documents. So I'm just going to click on standard. We're going to bring us to that menu where we select which columns we want to list that we've seen before. Since this is a brand new view, you need to go ahead and give it a name. You can choose to make this the default view right on the screen. You can also choose to make it a personal view. So if you're at work working with SharePoint documents and maybe you really don't want to see all the columns that are filtered, maybe it's something that's assigned and you only want to see items that are assigned to you. That's a perfect use case for creating a personal view because that's one of the items that you can filter on. So we're going to go through, we're going to have our basic columns here. In this case, I really don't care about the rating and I really don't care about the document type or who it's checked out to. All I want to see is the type of document, the name, and when it was last modified, and I actually want to see who the department is. So we're going to come through here. We've already checked our columns. I want to make sure that I checked the document one, and then we're going to filter this by document type. So it's not in my column list up here because I'm going to use that as a filter. And then we can choose, do we want to show items in ascending order and descending order? That's kind of default, but I did have that rating. I can then add a second filter and say by rating, and I want to show it in descending order. So I want to show the top documents at, in that order. Even though I don't want to see the ratings, that's how I want them sorted. So that's a little odd. I'm not sorting it by the date, which is where it would default to, or alphabetical. I'm going to sort them by the rating, even though I'm not displaying that. Now again, if I wanted to come in here and add a total to my column, I can. I can just total the number of documents. I can total the type of documents. That may be good for us since, we're sorting it by department. Again, we've looked at the different styles. I can come in here and choose shaded, not shaded. I can also specify my item limit. So SharePoint items default to 30 on a page. If you've got a really long list of items in document library or on even a list, that gets really old really fast when you have to scroll through multiple pages. So I normally change this to 100 no matter what size my list is. You can change it to a larger number, 500 on a page. The reason I choose 100 is that is the maximum number of items you can select at a time. So if I was an admin of a SharePoint site and I came in here and I wanted to bulk delete a bunch of items for whatever reason, maybe we already archived them, maybe something else happened, it was a duplicate, the maximum number of items you can select is 100. So that's what I tend to go with. If you're just creating a list and nobody's ever going to come in and need to select more than a couple items at a time, that can be 250, that can be 500. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. It's going to work on creating our view in the background. And again, all I wanted to see was the kind of item it is. So I have the little icon, the name of the icon, and the modified date. Now it doesn't look like it put in my filter. So we're going to go back into that and make sure that I have those columns in there. You can see it put in my count. So total count I have, let's go ahead and check document type. We did choose rating, so let's go ahead and show the rating and see if that updates our view. Let me double check my filters. Filtering by document type, filtering by rating, and let's go ahead and click OK on that. But you can see just by coming in and specifying a few items, so see it's sorting them by document type, internal, marketing. So it's, even though they all have the same date, this may look a little odd to somebody if they did have, different dates in here, they might go wondering, well, it's not alphabetical and it's not by date, but then it becomes very clear they're being grouped by internal, they're being grouped by marketing. So this gives me what I want, right? It's grouping these by alphabetical. It's giving me a total count. Now I can come in here and keep modifying this view and change, some of the other items. I can change it to box, I can change it to shaded, I can change it to newsletter, and then I can even come in here and let's say, grouping by. Maybe we want to group it by the document type this time. So we've already filtered it by group, but now we're going to group it. And let's see how that changes it. And these are just the different settings within a view that you can come in here and click all of them and see how it modifies that view. So now we've got a little bit of a different list. So we still have that document type internal. I can come in and remove this now, but this is a grouping. And this is one thing that is really powerful if you do plan to create different views on a list or library and then create a dashboard. So if you can imagine, I could come in here and we can click this drop down and show them all. But if I come in here and modify my view one more time, so we know we've got the document type. I'm not going to show that anymore. I'll keep showing the rating. We've got sort. We're sorting it by the document type. We've got group by, which is the one that I want, but maybe I don't want to show all those other departments. So I'm going to go ahead and say sort really doesn't matter. We're just going to sort it by rating, and I'll remove that second sort item. We want to show the top rating. I'm just going to change this one back to, oops, let me actually click into the menu. I'm going to change this to none. So now the only thing that I'm sorting is the rating from 5 to 1. Now here's where I'm going to put in a filter, and this is where you get into the really fine details of modifying views. I'm going to say show items when the column document type is equal to, and then we know one of those is internal. So what this filter is doing is only going to show the documents for internal department, not sales, not marketing. And then I'm going to click OK. Now this is where people tend to freak out a little bit because I just created a filter on this and all it's showing is 6 documents, and we know that there are 38 documents in this library. So you can see how somebody would come to this page, and if I set this as my default view, they would go, wait a minute, yesterday there were 38 documents, somebody deleted them. And if they didn't have any permissions to modify views, they may have a slight panic wondering where did those documents go. This is why views are extremely powerful. So what I could do on this same list, now this is my demo filter view and I keep coming in and fine-tuning it and changing it. I wouldn't even have to show the group in this case. I could set up 4 other views for internal, for sales, for marketing, for HR, and then I could put up a splash page and have those web parts, and then I've built a dashboard. But be mindful when you're creating filters on a view how that may affect your users. So I'm going to come back in and modify the view. We're going to remove that filter so we see the rest of the documents. But this is a great example to show to people, yes, filters are very powerful on views, but if you have users who are just used to coming in and accessing the list or library and seeing the information and you set up some filters, be aware that that can happen. And it's really powerful. All you have to do is click Show All Items in this view. We still have our grouping, so we're still going to get that grouping there. And it's really that simple to come in, create your own views, filter them how you want, and then you've got this information on there. So now we can see all of our 38 documents, but we can see them by department. Now this group by can be really any column. You could group them by the date. You could group them by the author. Any of that data that you're gathering, either that SharePoint takes care of for you, maybe you want to see documents by date. That could be a pretty large view depending on how much people are putting into your SharePoint environment. Or if you want to come in and group them by author, like I said in the case of a project, if you have a status column, is it still a pending item? Is it complete? You can imagine how powerful these views can get. So again, these filters are pretty powerful. Views in themselves are pretty powerful. I'm pulling this up on my mobile document just to see if it'll show you my new filter on here. And it looks like for the most part, the custom views aren't available. Let me switch back over to my PowerPoint and we'll go to my mobile app. So we've got the app up. Now I created that custom view and here it is, Demo Filter View. You can see on the mobile app, this pulls up very nicely. You still have that, visual view here. I can click See More and go into that. And then I've got a breadcrumb at the top. So I'm in my files and I'm filtering by internal. I can click back to files. And again, this makes it so much easier. on a mobile app since they're pushing these visual modern experiences. Now if I come back and click this into list, slightly different view. You can see that's a little bit less touch friendly. It's got a slight little indent, but you can see how this would work from both a SharePoint site on a laptop or desktop or a mobile site if you have your users accessing your SharePoint sites through mobile. So it gives you a couple of different options, and you can see this is why I wanted to talk about different views in SharePoint. I know we're coming up right at time, but this is one of the built-in tools within SharePoint. You don't have to write any code. All you're doing is thinking about what you're putting into your list, what you're putting into your library, and then deciding how do you want that data to be accessible. So while we're wrapping up, one thing that I want to mention is modern lists are on the way. So we're working in a library today. That could be a list that you created brand new columns for. It's the same kind of idea. You're filtering that data, you're organizing it, you're choosing how you want it displayed and what you want people to see with the views. Lots of powerful options in there. Very much like modern libraries, modern lists are coming. It's going to see some of the same stuff that we're seeing. We're seeing that tile view. You're going to be able to create views directly on the page. You're already seeing that with libraries. Now they're taking it to the list function. So very, very similar. Direct from Microsoft, inline creation of custom views and columns, improved mobile support, PowerFlow integration. The ribbon is going to have, again, that command bar, that charm bar there. So this is already rolling out. There is a preview available. We worked with document libraries today. It's really the same kind of thing with a pure list that looks like Excel. So that is coming down. One thing that we do want to make sure that you're aware of is Evolve 365 helps you keep up with all of the ongoing changes in Office 365. So these changes about modern lists and libraries, what do you do when Office 365 suddenly changes on you, especially SharePoint is having a lot of changes this year. Evolve 365 is our subscription-based help desk as a service. It's designed to increase end-user adoption and help evolve your organization to be more protected. So again, we have on-demand self-help videos. I've talked about this every week. Thousands of videos, including stuff on SharePoint, including stuff just like the Office homepage updated a couple weeks ago. Our content is already updated to reflect that brand new Office 365 homepage. We've already added in content on the modern libraries, and modern lists are on the way. We also have available add-ons for live support and vision and planning sessions, and every subscription comes with a dedicated Office 365 trusted advisor. So we do have a demo site that's available for a free trial. You can go to freetrial.o365support.com and register for a trial account. This has about 200 videos, a sampling of our 25,000 videos that are available to you. And if you're interested in learning more about the Evolve 365 suite, you can go to o365support.com. You can always email us at info@o365support.com. Again, I'll be here every Wednesday giving you more tips and tricks. Our August series is on the way now. We've got Outlook, OneDrive, and Delve coming up the rest of the month. You can always visit our past sessions on our YouTube channel. We're going to start pushing out September topics in the next week or two, so keep an eye out for that. I want to thank everybody again for joining us today. I hope this was an interesting look for you and very informative, taking a look at the SharePoint views and just how powerful they can be. Thanks everyone for your time today. Hope to see you next week.